Kyle Larson pulls off a clinic and wins in dominating fashion while a lot of the playoff drivers really don't show up today. Let's talk about NASCAR in Homestead-Miami. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR in Miami. And today we saw Kyle Larson pull off a clinic, a dominating win today by Kyle Larson, a super fast race car. Those guys had something figured out. Cliff Daniels, the team, the engineers, Kyle Larson had this racetrack figured out. You know, we've said for a long time, this is arguably Kyle Larson's best racetrack. Even though he hasn't got a win here, he's led multiple laps when this was the championship race, where ultimately he got shuffled out at the end of the thing because obviously, you know, the championship contenders are competing. Kyle Larson was always one of those more respectable drivers. He would kind of maybe let the championship drivers go by, not to interfere with the championship race, and we still see that today. But Kyle Larson has led so many laps at this racetrack. He's run very well at this racetrack. He's one of the guys, especially when in his earlier days when he was a rookie in the first few years of his career, he would run the high lane. This is a track where you got to run the high lane to find that speed. Awesome to see Kyle Larson dominate today. An epic performance today by Kyle Larson. Very impressive by that team that they were able to build a race car this fast and that Kyle Larson was able to maneuver that thing as well as he was able to. I think they finished the first stage like 10 seconds ahead of second place, so that was obviously fun to watch. Look, they even challenged Kyle Larson. They put him back into the field. I think it was around 50 laps to go. We had a yellow flag. I think it was Ryan Blaney who spun. Kyle Larson lost some spots on pit road. He did not start out on the front row. I think he was third or fourth on that restart. And obviously, when you're in the dirty air, that's going to hurt as well. But obviously, he had a bit of a slow car on the restarts when he was in that dirty air. We saw that when he restarted in the dirty air. The car was slow. He lost a couple of spots. I think he went back to like fifth place, but was able to maneuver his way back all the way up to second. Then we had another caution. Nothing was stopping Kyle Larson from winning this race. AJ Allmendinger, Ross Chastain tried to run him down there at the end of it, but Kyle Larson was just so fast running that high lane at this racetrack. And it's interesting because when you run the high lane, and I think NBC showed it, we saw drivers running maybe 2 to 4 inches farther off than a guy like Kyle Larson or a couple other of the front runners, and they were running way slower lap times. So it's crazy how big just 2-3 inches can make at a racetrack like this when it comes to running up against that wall. That's why this is arguably one of the fan favorite intermediate style tracks Homestead-Miami is. But it was really fun. It was really fun today to watch those guys ride right up against the wall. We saw a couple of them touch it. I think Kyle Larson was kind of scraping the wall sometimes. He was getting as close as he could without hitting the wall, and that's a lot easier said than done. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of talent to do that, which is another reason I really like this track. Fantastic race today. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching Kyle Larson dominate. And then, to make it interesting, they put him back in the middle of the field. You know, they had a small hiccup on pit road, and he's able to come all the way back up and still get the win. I really enjoyed this race. I thought that was a lot of fun to watch. So I do want to go through the stats just real quick for Kyle Larson. Obviously, this is his first win at his best racetrack, his first win at Homestead-Miami today. He's dominated a few of these things, but was never able to get the win until today. So he does get his first Homestead-Miami win, his third win of the 2022 season. Unfortunately, after losing, I think it was by 2 points, getting eliminated from the playoffs to Chase Briscoe a couple of weeks ago at the Roval. He is not qualified for the playoffs now, which is certainly disappointing for him because this would have punched him into the championship race, right? But unfortunately for him, not in the playoffs now. But this is still his third win of the season. And then, of course, this is his 19th career win. Obviously, 10 of those coming last year and 3 of those coming this year. So 13 of those 19 wins have been the last 2 years with Hendrick Motorsports, with still 2 races to go. Watch Kyle Larson in these last 2 races. It is not over for him whatsoever. So I do want to talk a little bit about the incident that we saw on pit road at the end of this thing. You know, at the end of this race, Martin Truex Jr. was kind of trying to get up there, you know, kind of trying to hold off Kyle Larson. Look, I don't think if the race had stayed green, I don't think Kyle Larson would have not passed Truex. I don't think Truex would have been able to hold off Kyle Larson. If this race had restarted with Truex in the lead, I don't think, especially with Kyle Larson in the clean air, I don't think Truex would have been able to stop Kyle Larson without just bulldozing into him, which we don't see that out of Martin Truex Jr. So you look at it here, coming on, I don't think Truex was going to be able to win this race. I don't think anybody, my point is, I don't think anybody was going to be able to beat Kyle Larson today unless obviously something traumatic happened to Kyle Larson at the end of the race. But I do want to show this. It was kind of controversial. NBC might have, they were trying to show this and make a point out of it. You see Truex Jr. here, and actually immediately on the radio, Truex said it was Larson's fault. Then in his interview, things kind of calmed down. Truex kind of probably looked at the situation. Truex kind of realized maybe it was more my fault than it was Larson's. But you see here, Martin Truex just, I don't know if he just missed his pit box. I think he just might have overlooked it, which is easy to do. We saw a lot of pit road problems today by multiple drivers today. I think he might have just missed his pit box a little bit. And, didn't see it and then just slammed on brakes right in front of Larson. Look, Kyle Larson's job is to try to beat Truex off of pit road. He's going to push it. He's going to get right behind him, a couple of inches behind Martin Truex Jr., trying to get any advantage he can to win the race off pit road and become the leader. Unfortunately, Truex I guess he just missed his pit stall there, didn't see it, slammed on brakes, got hit behind by Kyle Larson, went and slid into the pit wall. Lucky for him, nobody was injured. I was, a little bit afraid the jack kind of went flying a little bit. They could have hit the tires and flew them up in the air. So certainly an unfortunate situation for Truex, but I'm glad everybody is okay. And, Truex was upset. Truex is getting so close to getting that win. He's come so close all year. You go back to Darlington when he had an issue with a mechanical issue where the belt snapped off, obviously taking a win away from him there. A couple other races, New Hampshire, where he was really fast, wasn't able to get the win. You're talking about a Martin Truex Jr. that could have 3 to 4 wins on a season, and this has kind of been the theme of this year. Drivers that should have won, that could have won, that didn't get the win. Today, obviously, that's not the case. But Truex Jr., you're talking about 3 or 4 races that he could have, should have won, didn't win. So a very disappointing season so far for Martin Truex. Still got a couple of races to go where he could get that win, but it's just been a bad year overall for Martin Truex Jr. That kind of sums up his entire season, was today getting spun into the pit wall. So, it really does just kind of, highlight his entire year. But I do want to go through the top 10 real quick. Like I said, obviously Kyle Larson is the leader of this race, or the winner of this race, in a dominating performance. Led 199 of 267 laps, pulled off a clinic, nobody was touching him. Ross Chastain tried to get up to him at the end. Him and AJ Allmendinger had an epic battle. Those two, obviously, AJ Allmendinger trying to go for wins on a part-time schedule, but Ross Chastain trying to get points going into the next round of the playoffs, or to advance to the championship 4, which would be the next round of the playoffs. So Ross Chastain, AJ Allmendinger battling it out. AJ Allmendinger said in his post-race interview, I think it was frontstretch.com, I saw an interview from him. He said that was super fun racing with him. He said he had a good time racing with Chastain. He says he's had an issue with Chastain, but that issue was not today. Chastain obviously becoming known as one of those more aggressive drivers, which is okay for sure. So Ross Chastain obviously getting the second. AJ Allmendinger on a part-time schedule finishing third. And I do want to mention, AJ Allmendinger for colleague racing is going to a full-time schedule next year. He could be a real playoff threat. You're telling me somebody on a part-time schedule has got 3 top 10s in a row at the Roval last week at Vegas, and then today at Homestead-Miami. 3 very different racetracks, by the way, and he's able to finish in the top 10 in all 3 of those, and in the top 10 in multiple other races. That's really difficult to do on a full-time schedule. On a part-time schedule, it's just impressive what AJ Allmendinger is able to do. So cool to see him run top 3. Austin Dillon had a fantastic day, finishing in the 4th position. Brad Keselowski, we're seeing more speed out of this RFK team. Keselowski probably not going to get a win this year, looking at the racetracks coming up. It's not certain that he won't, but I don't think he will. I personally don't think he's going to be able to get a victory in the last 2 races, but going into 2023, things are starting to kind of shuffle out. We're starting to see some more consistency. We're starting to see some teams figure things out like we did today. That's going to carry over into 2023. There's going to be a few changes next year, I think, but I think you're going to see a lot more races where teams are figuring things out, and maybe a little bit less parity, maybe a little bit less different winners going into next season as teams and drivers start to figure this brand new car out. And I think Keselowski could be in the mix of one of those guys that figure things out, as he's been running very well. His team, him and Chris Buescher, have been running very well the last few weeks, or really since that halftime break, or that halfway season break back in Nashville. Martin Truex Jr., obviously, I said, could have won this race, or I still don't think he would have won this race on the front row in the final restart. Even if he was leading, I still think Kyle Larson was so fast, but he could have started in first on the final restart with 23 to go. But unfortunately for him, that did not work out. Finished 6th place today. So went up from 19th after the incident on pit road. Restarted 19th, got all the way back up to 6th. Not a bad day for Truex. Denny Hamlin finished 7th. Obviously, he's in the playoffs. Kevin Harvick, 8th today. And Kyle Busch, another top 10 for Kyle Busch, which is good to see. 9th place. And Daniel Suarez gets a top 10. Another one of those guys who's been running fast. So both Trackhouse cars do finish in the top 10 today. I want to go through the playoff grid now just real quick. You see here, Joey Logano, obviously with his win last week, is in the next round of the playoffs. We already know he's in the championship 4. He actually didn't have the best day today. I do want to mention that. I think he finished 18th today. Yeah, so not the fastest day for Joey Logano. I never really saw him in the top 10. I don't know if they're more focusing on the Phoenix car or what that deal is. Maybe just didn't hit it this week. I don't know. But we'll definitely have to see and watch them at Martinsville next week and see what they do since they're already guaranteed in the championship race. Ross Chastain, 19 points above with his second place finish today. He's there. Chastain, next week at Martinsville, just try not to get in a wreck. That's a lot easier said than done at a track like Martinsville, a small track. Things can happen. Just try not to get bumped out the way. Try to have a solid day. Get those stage points if they're available. Don't take yourself out for stage points. But Chastain's certainly looking good for him right now if he's able to finish the race. Not guaranteed, but it looks good for him right now going into Martinsville. Definitely a lot better than some of their guys. Chase Elliott, who is the championship favorite. He should be considered one of the top dogs, one of the championship drivers, championship favorite. I mean, really, he's got 5 wins this year, winning this round with 33 points. Another not fantastic day for Chase Elliott. 14th place finish. Obviously, ran outside the top 20 last week, finished outside the top 20 last week in Las Vegas. A similar track today. Finishing 14th is not going to cut it when you're trying to make the championship 4. Look, Chase Elliott did not run very fast at the Martinsville race in the spring. I think he was outside the top 10. It's a bit concerning for Chase Elliott. If he's not able to get any stage points and he's not able to get a top 10, your championship favorite might not even make the championship race. And that would be a serious disappointment for that 9 team, considering how good they've been this season with those 5 race wins and battling for multiple race wins outside of those 5. William Byron, 5 points in. If you remember, he dominated the Martinsville race in the spring. He was extremely fast. He led the second half of the race and was able to pull off a fantastic victory at Martinsville. And he's also been really fast in the later stages of these playoffs. Watch William Byron going into Martinsville next week. It looks like he is a serious threat to make the championship race in that 24 Hendrick Chevrolet. Denny Hamlin, below the cut line right now, just by 5 points. I mean, that is how close it is right now between those two. That's just 5 points. You're talking about 5 playoff points, 5 stage points, all throughout the season. It's just by 5 points. Can Denny Hamlin find a way to get those 5 points at Martinsville? The Toyotas were not that fast at Martinsville in the spring, but it's going to be, I do want to mention, I think it's going to be a bit different race, day race from night race, and an extra 100 miles added to that race. For sure, it's going to be a little bit different, but Denny Hamlin needs to find a way to get those points, try to get those stage points, and try to beat William Byron going into Martinsville next week. And then, of course, you have Ryan Blaney. Had his issue today, spun at the end of this thing. Ended up getting a finish outside the top 10, so disappointing for him. He's 18 points below. It's not impossible, but if you're Ryan Blaney, you have to go into it trying to get the stage points, but you also need to be trying to get the win. Look at it as a must-win. Try to get the stage points, but you're going to have to look at it as a must-win going into the third stage. I just don't know if it's going to be possible unless guys like Chastain or Elliott have major issues or Blaney finds a way to get in. Christopher Bell, Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe, obviously today having an issue early on in the race. I think he just got loose and then overcorrected, slammed into the wall, messed up the entire, I guess the axle was messed up. The NBC showed a fantastic graphic of the car, just messed everything up. So they're 44 points below. Look, Christopher Bell, last week with the issue when he got involved in that wreck with Bubba Wallace, these two are in must-win situations. It might not officially be a must-win, but Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe have to win next week in Martinsville. They have to go into that race saying, I've got to win that race if I want to advance to the next round. There's no other way about it, really. And that's unfortunate for those two, especially for Christopher Bell, who's been super fast all year, maybe even a little bit more consistent throughout the season than guys like Denny Hamlin and guys like William Byron. So it's certainly a shame that he's not going to make the championship 4. Well, we don't know if he won't, but it's certainly a shame that he's in a must-win to get into the championship 4, but it should be exciting to watch nonetheless. But that's it. That's really all there is to talk about after NASCAR in Miami. I thought it was a fantastic race. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys thought about the race. I thought it was fantastic. Obviously, like and subscribe if you like the video. And I might be at Martinsville next week, so tune in next week after. So if I'm maybe a few hours later than usual, it's probably because I'm on the way back from the race. I'm going to try to make the Martinsville race next week. But of course, that's really all there is to talk about. And of course, let's get rowdy.